Hello, welcome to Adobe Live today. I'm Spencer. Hi, sorry about the initial technical difficulties. Hope you guys are doing okay. Just checking in. It's been a little bit of a heavy time, as you know, in certain places of the world, specifically here in the United States. So, just want to check in and see how you guys are doing. I'll be checking in on the Behance chat. If you see me look to the side, it's because I have two monitors going, so my apologies. But we're going to get started this morning with just some quick and simple, easy Photoshop tips. I'm an illustrator, product designer, so I love drawing. That's what we're going to be doing a lot of today. I'll be using my own brush kit that I've created, and I'll give you a few tips as well. So feel free to check in. Hope you're all doing safe and you're doing okay. Personally, I'm okay. Like I said, it's kind of been a heavy time, and I've had to work through some thoughts and feelings and find that creative spark again. And I feel like this is a good opportunity for us to create and just do something together. As you know, Father's Day is coming up, and I'm fortunate enough to have a wonderful father in my life. So I wanted to just do something fun and create an easy, simple printable, and I'll just show you kind of how I approach illustrating uh, for this card. So feel free to ask any questions along the way. I definitely want this to be interactive. Looks like we're getting a request to boost my mic. Give me just a sec here, guys. All right, let me know if that's a little bit better. Yeah, let me know if that's a little bit better. Hopefully tomorrow's show, I'll iron out all the kinks. Okay, so we're gonna get started here. Let me just switch over to Photoshop. Let's see, here we go. All right, so we're just gonna switch over here, and I already have a document set up, but the first thing you kind of need to do in Photoshop is decide what you're doing. And today we're doing a printable. So we're gonna need to work in a cyan, magenta, yellow, and black color space, or CMYK. So first thing I'm gonna do here is go to File, and, or is it Image, Mode, and then select CMYK color. And that's just gonna make sure I have an accurate representation of colors in my document when I go to print this thing for my dad. So now I'm gonna go, it's asking me if I wanna convert these colors from what I was working in before. If you happen to create the document initially, you can pick the CMYK color mode. If you haven't, you'll need to take this step. So I'm just showing you how to fix my mistake, but I'll show you again. I'm gonna actually turn this off and say don't show again. But let's say I made a new document, File, New. I've got a bunch of settings here because I've been working in Photoshop. I can jump to Print or Art Illustration. Let's jump to Print here, Letter. So right here under Color Mode, okay, we can select that at the onset. So I can select CMYK color, I can pick the background color, and so forth, and then hit Create. Okay, there's a lot of settings here, but the most important thing if you're printing something is you want to work in CMYK. And the reason for that is if you look at your printer and the ink cartridge on that printer, it'll have those colors. If you have a fancy printer like mine, you might have light cyan and light magenta and a few others in between, but really it's these four colors that are mixed to give you all the colors you're going to see when you're printing. Now I can pick my canvas size here. This is just a standard letter sized piece of paper, but let's say I want to do something that's, postcard sized, 5x7. So what I'll do here is switch the width and the height to 5x7. And the DPI or resolution that I'm working at is about 300 dots per inch. Okay, that just means kind of like pixels. How many dots of color are we going to see per inch of printable here? So that's a pretty standard resolution for print, which is why Photoshop just sets it up for you. Okay. Thanks again for joining us on Adobe Live, by the way. Feel free to check in on the chat. I'll be looking at the Behance chat a little bit as well. So, and our trusty moderators will be handling questions and calling things to my attention. Okay, let's see. All right, so I now have my document 5x7 inches. The other thing I want to do here is go to Let's see. I'm so used to keyboard shortcuts. I think that's a thing with me. So I'm just gonna hit Command K, and that's gonna pull up my preferences, and then I want to change my units and rulers to inches. I'm in the United States, we work in inches a lot, so that's what I want to turn it to. Now you'll notice on the screen here, I now have a ruler at the top, okay, 5 inches wide and 7 inches tall. So to help set this up, what I need to do here, because you may not have a printer that can print the full width of your page, okay? So you need to add a little bit of buffer, you could say. So what I'm gonna do is if I click on the ruler on the left, okay, so here's your document space. The black stuff you're not gonna be drawing on, just the white stuff here. So if I click on this ruler and drag over, you'll notice a line now appears, and that line is going to become a guide. And if I hit shift, it's actually going to snap that guide to increments. So if I want to snap to say 1/4 inch, which for me is pretty standard when I'm printing on my printer, I can just release, and now I have a 1/4 inch guide. I can do the same thing on the right side here, 1/4 inch, and we'll do the same thing on the top and the bottom. Okay, so now I have these nice light blue lines, okay, and that's kind of where I want to make sure that the majority of my illustration is located. Okay, so now I'm ready to create something, and one of the best things about Photoshop is I think the possibilities are endless with what you can do. There's so many great tools and things you can do. I'm going to be using, let me make this window a little bit bigger there. I'm going to be using a photo reference of my father. So I thought it'd be fun to do some sort of caricature and maybe include some elements or things that he enjoys in this piece. So the first thing I'm going to do here, let's jump to my Finder, and I have these pictures of my dad, or me and my dad. So let's take a look at those. There we are together. He's got a lot less hair than I do, although I'm not far behind. There's me and my mom and my dad, and there's my dad and my son. Okay, so the reason I have these is I want to create some sort of illustration, and it's good to have reference. So I'm going to pull these in, let's select, and we can just drag them into Photoshop. I'm on a Mac, by the way. You can do this on a PC as well. And now I have the opportunity to place these images, okay? Now, when I'm working with reference, typically I like to have it up on another screen. Like I could throw it up on my iPad on the side, or I could have it on my phone. In this case, because we're all watching together, I'm just going to throw it in on the canvas. So if I hit enter, it's going to place that image, and that image is placed in a container, a smart object, if you will. So we can go back and edit these if we need to. And I'm just going to place a couple of these here. Actually, I'm going to use this one right there, and I'll definitely use this one with my son. Okay, and I'll just delete that original layer. So now I have these two layers, image 6722 and image 3391. That's just what the phone calls them. Okay, we got a request to lose the lower third. I'll turn it off here so you guys can see a little bit better. Okay, boom. Nope. Let me just make sure. Hold on just a sec, guys. Okay, there we go. So, yep, just hit the lower third. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so now I have these images in place, and you can hold shift and click these two layers. So layers are kind of like sheets of paper. You can kind of think of it like that, or quite literally having these photos on a surface or table. So I can move these around. Except in real life, you can't really scale stuff. So again, that's where Photoshop wins. I can now go to edit, free transform, and it is going to scale these images if I just click on the corner and drag. And what's really cool in Photoshop Creative Cloud 2020, I think 2019 as well, you don't have to hold shift to scale proportionally. So it's kind of nice. I can just move really quickly here and scale down. All right, so I've got these images. Now I want to move them so I can start drawing. Okay, and I only need about that much, right? I'm just gonna be looking at my dad's face, so it's okay that it's located at that spot. So now I want to draw And to draw, Photoshop's brush engine is awesome, by the way. Since I'm going to draw, I want to do that on a new layer. Okay, so looks like Steve in the chat says, I describe layers to a newbie friend as sheets of saran wrap. That's true. It's kind of like having transparent sheets, and there's stuff on them, and you can scale, move around, and do all sorts of things. And sometimes you'll hear me talk about working in a non-destructive way. And that just basically means when I work, I like to have the options to change things. And layers are a great way to do that, where whatever happens on screen isn't permanent. I can move it around, I can scale it, I can tweak, transform, and so forth. All right, let's get to drawing. So now I want to go to Layer, New Layer, or you can hit Command-Shift-N, which is typically what I do. But I want to make sure you guys understand where to find that, okay? So New Layer, and there's a bunch of options here. It's asking if I want to label it with a color, what this mode thing is, opacity. It doesn't matter. I'll just call this Dad for now. Don't worry about the other settings. If you want to play with them, you can, but don't worry about them right now. All right, so I've got this layer Dad, and now we're going to start drawing. All right, so to start drawing, on the toolbar on the left, right now the Move tool or Direct Select tool is picked, okay? Move tool, that's V on the keyboard. So if you see me switch from my brush to my Move tool, it's because I hit V, okay? It's kind of like I like to think of it as the upside down mouse cursor. So you can hit V, and that'll allow you to move things. All right. So let's go to the brush, which is about a third of the way down right here, brush tool. And there's this handy video. It shows you kind of how to paint, right? So now I've selected brush. Now, like I mentioned, I made a bunch of brushes for myself, and that's another cool thing you can do in Photoshop. Maybe a little bit more advanced, but something you can do. So if I right click, or if I go to Window, Brushes, mine's already open here to the right, I have all my brushes. In fact, one of the cool things about Photoshop is if you're working, and not just Photoshop, but rather Creative Cloud as a whole, if you're working on multiple devices, machines, you can actually put your brushes in your library. Okay, so there's another window here, Window Libraries. And this gives you an opportunity, it's all loading up now. Here's all my brushes that I made, so that if I go to my iPad Pro and I want to use Fresco, those brushes will show up too. It's pretty cool. But we'll just use them on my computer for now. Just a little side tip for you guys if you have some brushes that you like to use. Okay, so here's my Sketch A Day brushes that I made. And I'm just gonna pick this canvas pencil, all right? And let me zoom in so I can show you what this looks like. And let's go ahead and hide the interface. If you want to hide the panels in Photoshop, say you want more room to draw, because when I draw, I like to draw big and move my hand more. If you want to hide that stuff, just hit Tab, okay? I don't know what the menu command, however, is here, but Tab is the shortcut to hide all your panels and all that extra stuff. If you want to get rid of the rulers, Control R will do that as well. But like I said, I'm going to try and focus on drawing in these guides. Looks like I made a mistake on the top guide. We can always move that one, so I'm not going to worry too much. So here's this canvas pencil, and you'll see that it's a little bit rough, and I specifically wanted a rough pencil for this this drawing. Now here's some cool settings I want to show you guys when you're drawing, and this should help a little bit. Okay, so the first thing is smoothing. Okay, so let's see. Okay, this brush is not letting me smooth. Let's see if I can show you in another brush here. For some reason, it's not working on this brush. All right, not sure why it's not working on this one. It might have to do with the brush settings here. Give me just a sec. Two settings. Yeah, that's weird. Anyhow, if you can get it to work, smoothing allows you to draw a little bit more naturally, radically, and Photoshop will actually try and correct what you did. All right, so maybe I can look into that and show you a bit more on that for tomorrow's stream. Also, if you have any suggestions, ideas, or things that you want to learn in Photoshop that I'm not covering today, feel free to mention those in the comments in the chat, and I'll be happy to cover that tomorrow as well. All right, so let's get to drawing, like I said. All right, so when I'm doing a caricature here, or some illustration of a person, I like to look at kind of the qualities of a face and see if I can implement those. So for example, my glasses are something distinct on my father. He's got these big bushy eyebrows and just this awesome smile in his eyes. So I want to try and capture that. And first step here is I'm drawing with a red color. Okay, and that's kind of a way for me to just layer and move really quickly. So let's go, and I have one circle here, and now I want to draw another ellipse, something like this. Okay, so two shapes, and if they're too big, you can always transform that as well. So you can go to Edit, Free Transform, or Control T. I think I'll do Control T for the rest of this because that's what I'm used to. So Control T, and if you hold Alt, by the way, on the keyboard, so I'm holding the Alt key, it'll allow you to scale from the center as opposed to scaling from the corner. Okay, so this is without Alt. If I hold Alt, it's going to scale from the center of what's selected. All right, so now I'm going to scale down just a little bit here, like so. And using my red pencil in these two shapes, I'm going to start deciding, okay, where am I going to put some things? All right, looking at his nose. All right, so let's go ahead and start kind of sketching that in. I don't want to put too much detail in, but I do want a nice big smile. That's kind of why I went with this wider shape. All right, and since we already have this line here, I can actually use that for the eyes. Okay, something like so. And like I mentioned, he's got these big bushy eyebrows. My dad's a really cool guy, always willing to help. I actually grew up on the island of Jamaica. I know it doesn't sound like it, but that's where I grew up, and I've been here for about 20 years now. So in case you're wondering why I don't have an accent, that's why. Okay, so now I've got some ears. We'll fix the eyes and tweak a couple things, but more importantly, I think one of the distinctive things here is his glasses. So I'm just gonna sketch these in just real rough. This is our rough sketch. One of the things I like to say when I'm drawing to kind of take the pressure off, if you've never done this before, is when in doubt, rough it out. Okay, when in doubt, rough it out. So that's what I'm trying to do here, is just rough out this sketch and make sure that I at least have an idea on paper what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to hide this image so you guys can kind of see a little bit better. So there's my initial stab at his face. It's a little bit wide on the bottom, but I think it does capture the smile. All right. One of my memories of my father is he was always, well dressed. So he was a businessman. He would always, be in a shirt and tie or suit, that kind of thing. So I want to include that here. So the next thing I want to do is draw something of a collar. I don't have one in that picture. Here's a better picture. So again, you can look at reference if you need to figure out a shape. So we've got this kind of V shape here and maybe a little collar lapel. All right, so let's go back and I can just sketch a couple lines. I am using a drawing tablet, by the way. This is a Wacom Cintiq, if you're wondering. This isn't done with the mouse. It's a lot harder if you're trying to use your computer mouse to do so. All right, so there I've got this collar, and I'm gonna just kind of sketch or start to sketch out a tie. And since I'm running out of a little space, we can scale down again, like so. And I'll just finish off this tie, and I'm gonna keep it kind of short. Now, you may have noticed here, I'm gonna show you something, another tip. If you do have guides on your canvas, okay, and you try to draw near a guide, you'll notice that there's a little bit of a jog, okay, and it might frustrate you, and you go, why can't I draw a nice line through that guide, okay? What's happening is there's a setting on right now. So if I go to view, there's a setting, snap, and typically it's on by default. So I'm gonna deselect that. And now when I draw through my guide, okay, I don't have that jog anymore, okay? So if you're running into that issue, if you have guides and you're using a brush or an eraser or some tool like that, that's jogging, that's usually why, is that snap is turned on. Okay, so here's a little tie. Now I don't want to draw his whole body, okay, but I do want him to have at least some shoulders and some shape to it, okay. So let's turn off our pictures because I think I have enough here, and I'm gonna go ahead and scale this down because I also want to include some text on this. We're gonna do some hand lettering. We're gonna make some patterns. We're gonna add some texture. Okay, all with our drawing skills here. Okay. So let's center right about there, and now I got to decide. Okay, what shape do I want to make this? Okay, I could come down like so, and if I want, you could. We'll just play. A lot of drawing is just playing and figuring out what works. We could do something like that. That's an option. If you want to play with options as well, one thing I like to do is just copy and duplicate a layer. So I can go to layer, duplicate layer. It's going to say dad copy. Just go OK. I'm terrible at naming things, by the way, but if you want to name things, you can name them as you make that new layer, and you can rename them if you want to as well. All right, so I've got this dad copy, and I'm just going to turn off the visibility. If you want to turn off the visibility of a layer, let's see. I'm going to make these thumbnails a bit bigger so you can see. So there's dad copy and there's dad. And right next to the layer, there's that little eyeball. Okay, if I tap on that eyeball, it's going to hide the layer. Almost like closing your eyes in real life. When you close your eyes, you don't see anything. When your eyes are open, you see that thing. So turn that on. And now I can erase. Actually, let's make sure my opacity. I was playing with a lot of settings here before the stream, so I'm just going to make sure my opacity is turned up on the brush. Don't worry about that if you're a little bit confused. Your default should be okay. All right, so I can erase, and just, again, this idea of working non-destructively, you can see I have two layers, okay, and now I'm trying to modify. So if I wanted to, say, for example, just have some random shape like so, and maybe like that. That could be a comp, if you will. I can keep doing the same thing and just exploring until you find something that works for you. I kind of like the original direction, but let's see if we can do something else here. Oops. It's back to my brush. All right, maybe it's some shape behind. Okay, combined with the circle. You can play with these shapes and find what works. Again, when in doubt, rough it out. Just have fun. Makes it a lot easier for you. Okay, this kind of makes him look like a real estate agent though. So I'm going to go back to my initial idea. And sometimes the initial idea that you come up with actually works. Adika says, I know a friend who drew a Gundam with his laptop touchpad. That's a giant robot, I believe. And yeah, that's impressive. I've never actually drawn with my trackpad. I've done it with a mouse, but not my trackpad. Okay. If you run into a situation like this where you have your brush selected and you see this circle with a line through it, okay, that just means you can't draw. And if you tap, Photoshop's going to kind of yell at you and go, do you want to rasterize this? Or it might be nothing selected or the layer's hidden. Those are a few possibilities. Just make sure that you're selecting the right invisible sheet or layer that you want to draw on. Okay, so there's my dad layer. We're back. Okay, so now I'm ready to do some more clean line work, if you will. So I'm going to make another layer on top of this. We can call this dad lines. And I'm going to select my dad layer. Now, just like real life, if I have tracing paper, if you've never used it, it's actually a really good way if you're drawing with a real pen or pencil to do this kind of process, okay? And just take the pressure of drawing down a bit, because drawing can be really intimidating, right? And if you give yourself some space to mess up or work smarter with it, it can be a lot easier. So this is one way to do that. Now, with the dad layer selected, I'm going to, in the layer panel here, it's on the lower right of my screen, I'm going to tap the opacity marker here, And now I can slide my opacity down, and you'll notice that now I have a very light version of that initial sketch, okay? And you can adjust this to your comfort level, whatever you're okay with. I'm gonna leave it at about 30%. One shortcut to do that, for those who like shortcuts, is you can use the number keys on your keyboard as long as the move tool is selected. So here, for example, select the move tool, and let's say I want this to be 70% opacity. I hit 7, and now the layer looks more intense. If I hit 3, it goes back to 30%. So just a quick shortcut if you're working really fast and you're used to drawing. That's a quick and easy way to change your opacity. Another shortcut I want to show you guys, let me get back my red color here. Let's say you want to draw with black, okay? You want to work with black or white. A quick way to do that, instead of going to your color palette, is you can hit the letter D. Think of it as default. So D, default. And when you do that, it makes the color in the foreground black and the color in the background white. Okay, so those are the defaults. So now I have my brush. I'm going to zoom in, and the brush is kind of big. So I'm going to adjust my size down just a little bit here. Now, when you're drawing with a tablet, it is pressure sensitive, so you have the ability to be more expressive if you want. But like I said, I wanted this drawing to have a bit of roughness to it. Another shortcut, when you're adjusting your brush size, you might see me do this as well. You can hit the square brackets on your keyboard. The left or right square bracket will adjust incrementally the size of your brush. So that's something that you can do as well. So now, since I already did the hard work of roughing it out, I can just trace my initial sketch and also use undo if you need to, right? It's just a good way to, again, take the pressure off what you're doing. And I'm just gonna use deliberate strokes here, like so, to start creating my illustration, right? It's pretty cool. Again, easy way to just take that pressure off. I don't know about you, but I get a little nervous sometimes when I draw still. I've been doing this for, 20 years almost. Okay, I kid. I don't get that nervous anymore, but occasionally when you're not sure about something, it's helpful to just take that pressure off, okay? Undo is your friend. So one thing I like to do, I actually do woodworking as well, as a hobby. And one thing I like to tell myself, I have lots of these isms, by the way, so be prepared. I'll give you lots of isms, but one of the things I like to tell myself is there's always a fix, okay? Again, my goal is to make drawing as easy and approachable as possible. All right, so I got those lines. Now let's get the eyes in, like so. Again, using the lines that we had before and just pulling out what we want here. And let's see, I'll get the top of his head and then I'll revisit the glasses as well. Tim's not nervous. Tim's ready to go. All right. So here, and I want to show you another quick tip. Well, two. So for me, drawing on paper on a table, one of the cool things you can do is you can rotate your paper if you're used to drawing a line a certain way. In Photoshop, you can kind of do the same thing. If you hit the R key on your keyboard, that's going to give you the rotate tool. All right, so I believe it's not there, but I just know the shortcut. So if you hit R, you'll see the icon has changed, and now I can rotate my canvas. If I zoom out, you'll see the canvas and all the guides are rotated as well. So now I'm going to zoom back in here, and now I can just draw a curve. All right, so let's say I draw this curve. Actually, let's do this on a new layer, and I'll show you why in just a sec. So let's say I'm trying to draw this curve, and it's really hard to get the right shape. I can actually go to Edit, and this is on a new layer. So we're going to go to Edit, Transform, and there's a command here that says Warp. So Edit, Transform, Warp. That's one way to do it. There's another way to do it as well, and I'll show you guys. It's this little icon. So no matter what you're doing, if you transform right here, you'll see this icon. You can click on it, and right now this is allowing me to scale normally like I would, but when I select this icon, it's in warp mode, which basically means I can take this line now, okay, and move it to where I want. It's really handy if you're worried about your precision and you just want to take some of the difficulty out. It's not perfect. You can also use liquify. That's another way to do this. But if you're making small adjustments, it's a great way to get your lines where you want them to be. All right. Forgot to put my phone on do not disturb. All right, there we go. So now I've got that line in place. I like to rotate and get to the spot that feels most comfortable for me when I'm drawing. So we're going to do a bit of that. And I think I'm drawing on the wrong layer, but it's okay. We'll just merge these down. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so now I'm just going to draw that line, and let's connect to the bottom here like so. Boom. All right. Now, like I said, I was drawing on the wrong layer, meaning when I zoom out, you'll see I can turn off the visibility of this layer, and those strokes I just created disappear like that. I can actually select both of these now and go to layer. Let's see. I just know the shortcut again. But it's like layer, merge layers. There we go. Merge layers. Command E at the bottom. Boom. And it's going to take the name of the highest layer. So I just need to rename this. We'll call this dad lines again. Simple. No big deal. All right. If you've rotated your canvas and you want to reset it, you can actually hit escape, and that'll reset it to the original setting. Hello, Terry. Welcome. Terry White is here. Now I'm nervous. Okay. So let's draw these frames in. Actually, I want to look at my reference again because I want to make sure I capture his chunky, funky frames. Well, maybe not so chunky, funky, but the bridge, you know, and the general shape. All right. So let's go back to these lines, and I'm going to modify this a little bit. All right, just like that. Okay. If you want to put 2 lines in, I mean, you're not drawing my dad. Maybe you are. But if you're drawing glasses, you can do 2 lines. You could do 1 line. Whatever works for you. Use undo. Use the warp tool if you need to correct something. We're just going to keep moving here. All right. So now I've got those. And I don't want to get too much detail necessarily, but I do want to capture those, like I said, bushy eyebrows. So I'm just going to add a little tailing here on this shape, like so. Maybe a couple lines. And now let's get his pupils in. If you don't know how to draw faces, it's okay. Use simple shapes. Remember, I just used 2 circles here, okay, just to get the shape in, and utilized these lines as well for the cheeks. And now we kind of have a little face going on. So just figure out creative ways and shapes. You could do this with a rectangle or square as well, if your figure or person's face maybe has a more pronounced or structured look and feel. You can do that. All right, let's turn off our underlay. This is called an underlay, by the way. Let's turn this off, and you will see that there's our sketch. Just a pro tip, there's lots of free brushes out there, free brushes that you can use. So you can always check those out and download them. Just play, you know, Kyle Webster has amazing brushes that you can get, so many free brushes. Okay, so check those out. All right, let's finish up our illustration here. And for the collar, I'm just gonna, like I said, simplify, right? Just draw my lines in. Keep it a little rough and textured. Now let's get the tie. And I'm going to want to put some patterns on the tie, by the way. Just a little side tip. This one's a little bit hard to show, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the mechanics of drawing, okay? Just a little bit. So bear with me. When you draw, if you draw with your shoulder and your elbow, you're less likely to make a lot of mistakes with your wrist. So as I'm drawing, that's actually what I'm doing, is moving my entire arm, okay? Kind of like a robot. If you see those cool robots in a factory, it's like, you get better lines that way, or at least I do. And it's something that when I teach my students to do. So maybe give that a try and see if that helps you as you're trying to draw those lines. All right. So we'll keep with this simple shape. Like I said, we can use that trick again to fix this line. I'm going to try and draw a circle. All right. Here's another tip. If you're trying to draw a big complete shape like this circle, and by the circle I mean the shape on the outside here that we initially sketched, you can actually zoom out, and then it's a lot easier to draw a small circle than it is a big circle. Okay, I mean still a little challenging, but we can fix this. Okay, I'm just more interested in the thickness of the line. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I think I can work with that. So now I'm going to hit transform, tap my little magic button here for warp. Also, if you're trying to pan the screen, hit spacebar and you can move the canvas around on the screen and just get it to where it's most comfortable for you. It's where I want them. Okay. Just like so. If you want a bit more character, if you don't want it to be perfect, you can do that as well. Just play with these handles. And there, I've corrected my stroke. That makes a bit more sense. So let's go back. I just hit undo, and I'm gonna put 2 lines in like so, and then connect across. That way I don't have to draw the hands. So that's my little cheat for you today. Okay, we'll just obscure that. And now I have a caricature of my dad that I can work with. There's a couple of things I want to tweak. His right cheek's a little bit big there. Maybe he's watching. Hopefully he's not. But maybe he is. And he'll go, oh, my cheek's not that puffy. I'm like, I know. I'll fix it for you. All right. So not too much detail here. Maybe just a couple lines here and there. And like I said, I do want to fix something. So I'm going to merge these layers again. Actually, if I have dad lines on top, when I merge, it'll just retain that layer name. Now, sometimes in Photoshop, you might not be sure, especially if you're working with a lot of layers, you might not be sure of where that last layer you created was in the order of stack of things. And one of my ways to find that, pixels, is going to give me options as to what these are. Or I can hit isolate layers and it'll isolate those layers, okay, in my stack. Let me get rid of this properties and adjustment panel. Let's close these tab groups so you can see here's a bunch of layers that I'm working with, right? And I may not be sure what I want to pick for this cheek. So if I right click, it gives me the options and it's actually telling me what the most likely outcome is. So dad lines, because it's on the top, is what's first in the stack, okay? If I right click on the red section here, it's going to give me, oh, this could be dad or background. What are you trying to select? So Photoshop's actually trying to help me be smarter about how I work. So I'm going to right click, hit dad lines, and now I know, okay, I'm on the right layer. If I turn the visibility on and off, you can see it is the right layer. Now, like I said, I want to make some correction here. So I hit L on my keyboard, which think of it as lasso tool. And there's a couple options here. There's the regular lasso, polygonal, or magnetic. 99% of the time, I use the polygonal lasso tool. It's a little bit easier as I don't have to draw my selection. I can just click in a few places. For example, here's a click, click, and click. And now we have the marching ants, and that's my confined work area. So if I want to isolate a part of my drawing or my illustration here for my printable, that's how I would do it. Okay, so let's deselect that. You can do select, deselect, or Control D. And now I want to pick a section of this line, okay? So I'm going to just click around like so. Boom, boom, boom. And it's really fast too if you're using the polygonal lasso tool. If you're not after precision per se, and you just want to move really quickly, it's a great way to do that, okay? So here, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to do transform and warp. I'm just going to pull this cheek in. I don't want to have to redraw the line, okay? But I do want to make this small adjustment, and I can do that if I want to see how this looks overall. Okay, there's the before, and this is kind of where we're ending up. I'm going to pull this up just a little bit. So that feels better to me. All right. That feels a lot better to me, and I'm gonna go with that. Okay, a couple more things. Let's erase. Looks like I have, okay, good. That's on a different layer, so I can just click, and now I've cleaned up just a little bit there. All right, so now let's merge these two layers. So I've picked dad lines and my temporary work layer, layer 1, and I'm gonna go to layer, merge layers, and now these are all on the same thing, okay? If we turn our original sketch off, there we have my illustration of my dad. Cool. Now, like I mentioned, I wanted to do something on the tie and maybe create some sort of pattern. You know, he has things he likes. He really likes steak. Like, it's, he really, really likes steak. Likes technology. So I'm going to try and think of some patterns or elements to add to this that we can kind of sketch in. But for now, I do want to make a new layer called tie. And we're going to just sketch in some divisions here, as well as pattern elements. So this layer is going to, let's see, if I want to make this tie striped, for example, we can just draw some lines on, like so. And if this is your dad or your caretaker or whoever it is that's special in your life, I like to have things that represent them in my illustrations and drawings where possible. So I may add elements, and you can see again, working in this non-destructive way, I might go, you know what, I really don't like the tie with patterns. I can turn that off. And that's the whole idea, is being able to have that flexibility when you work is super nice. Okay, so here maybe there's some polka dots or something we can sketch in, and I may want to repeat this as well. Okay, so maybe we have a three-peat, so 3 different things, and then at the bottom I have these variously sized or varied polka dots, like so. If you don't like one of them or a few, you can always erase, and notice I'm clicking and it's erasing, oops, little mistake there, but it's erasing everything except the outline. Okay, and that's because, again, we're working in a non-destructive way. All right, highly recommended. It'll save you a lot of heartache later. Okay. And maybe here we have some sort of swirls. I mean, I don't think he would ever wear a tie like this, but I kind of like it, so I'm gonna go for it. So maybe some swirls and then some sort of zigzag pattern. We can throw that in. We can always change it later if, you know, if it's not working for you or whatever. That's the beauty of working digitally and in Photoshop. And tweak things, modify, and so forth. All right, so there's the funky tie. We've got that in. And these little underarm parts are kind of bugging me. So I'm going to erase those, and let's make a little tweak here and just simplify it. All right. So I'm going to go something like this, just like that. All right, so we're almost ready to color. Okay, I want to add some text to this. We'll do some background stuff as well. Oops, made a mistake there. Another thing you can do in Photoshop, so let's say you have thematically similar elements on a page and you want to always associate those things. I can go to Layer, New Group, okay? I think it's Group from Layers. And we can call this Sketch Lines. Hit OK, and now all the sketch lines are in the same layer. And this is an important thing, because you may have noticed I hit transform and I was trying to reduce the size of this, but really just one of these 2 layers was selected. But I want to preserve my flexibility. I want to be able to change things later. So if I have the group selected now, sketch lines, it's kind of like, think of it like a folder on your computer or a stack of papers that you put a binder clip on, okay? And now those are just one entity or group. So now I can go to Edit, Free Transform, and we can scale it down. All right, just like that. I'm trying to make some room for a little bit of text at the bottom right here. All right. Okay, let's correct another line. This line got a little bit thick right there, but I want that texture on the line, so I'll just kind of come in. Let's zoom in here, and if I just use this brush is cool because it has a little bit of what's called jitter to it, so it gives you that kind of raw sketched feel, if you will. All right, so now I need to think of something to write, like love you, best dad ever, whatever. We can do that after. I want to show you a couple things. Coloring, that'll go pretty quickly here. So to do that, the color, I always like to work on a separate layer for my colors, okay? So I've made a new layer. We can just call this color. And again, if you label your layers, cool. If you're like me and you like to move fast and you haven't labeled them, that's okay as well. Now we are working in CMYK, like I mentioned. So if you're used to mixing color in CMYK, you can actually change the way your color selector picker shows up here in the panel. Typically I'm using HSB, which stands for hue, saturation, brightness. And basically that just means the hue is kind of like the rainbow. So if I want to pick something brown, I'm going to pick something in this reddish zone. And then if I turn up the saturation, you'll notice that the brightness slider all of a sudden changes, okay? And so I can adjust the saturation and then pick the brightness. Cool. That's one way to do it. If you do have reference, however, and skin tones are really hard, so if you do have reference, like this picture, we can actually use the eyedropper tool. And that's going to be on the toolbar here. Again, well, this is about 1/4 of the way down. There it is. And now, if you want the shortcut for that, it's just I. Think of it as eyedropper, not E. E's for eraser. And now I can just pick from my dad's skin tone. The color on the bottom of this color picker is actually what I kind of estimated or guesstimated the color would be. So I'm actually not too far off. All right. And I may want to just even manipulate it just a little bit, depending on the final effect or tone I'm after. All right, so we can do a quick test here. Again, this is on a new layer. Let's make sure our color layer is selected, and you'll see we can color in. Now, I've got lots of options for brushes here. I'm going to use, let's see, I have this marker brush that I created, so I'm going to open up here, and let's use, yeah, there we go. It has a nice texture to it. So let's zoom out, and I'll just kind of use this marker brush to start shading, okay? Now, if you're not really sure how to shade, that's okay. You can fill in with color and then shade on top of that. But what I'm trying to do here is just get all my shadows in, you know, like right there on the nose, maybe under the eyes, close to the nose bridge, right? Just like so. Top of the cheeks, I want to keep a little bit lighter. On the bottom here, perhaps add some shade. Notice I'm not shading all the way to the edge, and that is because of the way things are just lit. I'll just put it that way. But feel free to fill in if you're doing a similar illustration, okay? And just make it your own. All right, and like I said, there's always a fix. When in doubt, rough it out. And the other one is, the other ism is light till you get it right, okay? So that's another thing you can do. We'll just kind of feather in here and blend together. Probably change tone in a little bit and color to get some more darks in. Notice we don't have a line there, but I am trying to kind of create a little bit of a shape just with the color. So it doesn't all have to be done with lines, certainly. All right, just like that. And if you are using something like a drawing tablet, it is pressure sensitive. So the lighter you press on your tablet, the less color is going to go down. So you can create these blends using pressure, right? So how hard you push down is going to give you a little bit of difference in the amount of color hitting that canvas. Okay, so right under the nose here, I'm going to go a little bit dark. Again, top of the nose, light, middle here. If you need a guide, you can always look at the photo. But again, a drawing is really just an interpretation of what you see. So It's okay if it's not perfectly accurate, as long as people understand what it is you're trying to do. Okay, so now I want to go a little bit darker right here, just in some of these shadow areas, and we are blending the stroke, and you'll see contrast is your friend. Okay, so sometimes you want to be able to go a little bit darker, just so that things feel more three-dimensional. Okay, so I'm just focusing on things like the bridge, maybe side of the nose, under the eye, above. Okay, just to give it some, not it, give him some dimension. Sorry, Dad. All right. So just like that. And this is probably the hardest, most time-consuming part, you know, drawing people, or you want to make sure that you capture their essence and, you know, in this case anyways, get my dadness into my drawing. All right. That's looking pretty good so far, so I'm happy with it. But again, just experiment, play with it. Tons of awesome brushes available on Creative Cloud if you're looking to just try something different. Okay, let's go a little bit darker as well. Again, I can just play with this brightness slider. I can also play with the saturation as well. But I just want to get a little bit darker in some of these areas. If you need to adjust your brush size, you can use the keyboard like I mentioned to do that. Left or right square bracket, and that's what's going to get you that adjustment, like so. Boom. All right, now we're looking good. We've got some good shadow in. I do want to erase for the eyebrows because he does have those bushy eyebrows. All right, and this is not quite black, the color here for the eyes. All right, but I do want to shade these in, and right where we have our, I always confuse pupil, iris, eye hole. I always confuse iris and pupil, but I'm just gonna take a hard brush and just tap like so, and using a little bit of white, okay, just in the top corner there. Now we have something that looks a little bit more like an eye you would expect. All right, let's do his lips real quick, and maybe up my saturation just a little bit. Okay, so we'll use that. Sometimes when you're drawing too, you want to make sure that the way you apply your stroke relates to the shape of the thing. So instead of shading this way, okay, notice I am shading top to bottom, okay? Just like that. On the top of the lip here, we're going to get some light, so I'm just going to focus my shading like so. Switch back to that vertical shading. It helps when you're trying to show the shape of something, all right? But yeah, definitely if you haven't used Photoshop brushes much, check out what's available on Creative Cloud for free because there are some really great resources for you there as well. All right, so I'll just keep working this. We'll get a little bit darker. I think tomorrow we'll focus a bit more on patterns. We'll try and get the illustration here done, and I'll show you kind of how I like to map out text. All right, maybe just a couple tips to help you as well. We'll shade this in, finish the tie today as well. Okay, let's go a little bit darker here again, just to kind of pull out some of these shades. So play with contrast, play with the way you shade. There's lots of ways to do this, certainly. All right, like so. If you are looking for specifics on drawing techniques, you can feel free to reach out to me after the stream as well. Just want to throw that out there for you guys. All right. One of the hard things about drawing too is knowing when to stop, right? So I think I'm coming close to that point where I'm just gonna call it good on this one. All right, just gonna get the corners of the mouth here, just a little bit underneath his lips. And when you're drawing, here's another tip. If you are looking to, Tim says the pupil is the hole in the center of the iris. Thank you, Tim, for the anatomy correction. If you want to pick a color from the canvas, you can hold Alt and you'll notice that your brush changes to the eyedropper. So that's another shortcut for you guys if you're painting. Super handy because you can just pick colors, blend, paint. So I want to pick this color, for example, and just lightly fill in a little bit of his lip. We'll leave some white there as well. Now let's get the frames in. Okay, and I believe he has kind of goldish frames, so I'm going to go with maybe not an exact gold, but some sort of yellow. Now, again, this is going to be printed CMYK, so I'm going to just take a little precaution and pick my color. Brush, if you're wondering where that is, just under general brushes. We all have these if you have Creative Cloud, soft round, hard round. Sometimes I just use these as general purpose fill brushes. Okay, they're not, at least this one is not pressure sensitive, so it's just going to give me a nice whole line like so. Okay, just like that, and we'll come in and fill in behind like so, and then we'll fix the eyebrows and get to the tie. All right, so just like that. Okay guys, hopefully you know, remember we just used 2 shapes to start, kind of did some erasing. Tim says feel free to join Photoshop Discord. Yes, I will join. Thank you, Tim. And I'll hang out there so I can answer questions and shoot you some links. I have tons of video resources available as well. So if you're into drawing, I'm happy to kind of direct you to those. All right, so now let's get the eyebrows. And you'll notice I have a bunch of layers starting up, okay? This is where it gets a little bit messy, again, because I'm trying to work in a non-destructive way. And I want to be able to say, hey, you know what? I don't really want glasses there. And if I'll just do this to show you. If these 2 layers were merged and I wanted to change the glasses, it would be a lot of work, right? I did a lot of work on the skin tone and his face. So having those separate layers allows me, let's separate those again. Okay, let's just label this glasses. Having those separate layers allows that flexibility, okay? Same thing with the eyebrows, okay? I want to work on that. So hit eyebrows or call it eyebrows, and now I can zoom in. And they're kind of salt and pepper gray. Like if you ever met him in real person, you'd be like, whoa, those are some eyebrows. Okay, but I love them. So now back to this brush. Actually, this is a different brush, but it has a good texture. So we can leverage that texture, all right, with some black and white. So I'll start with some white here. And now, remember that shortcut to get the default color. That shortcut is D, okay? If you want to switch your background and foreground color as well, there's a cool little arrow here. Looks like it's bent. So it's an arrow that points both ways, but it looks like it's bent down. That's actually going to switch your foreground and background color. So if you have 2 colors you're working with and you want to just switch them, that's a way to do it. Or you can hit X, okay? And when you hit X, it will allow you, let's just fill in a little bit. It'll switch those colors for you. All right, so I'm going to switch to black and using some pressure sensitivity here, just kind of shade in just a little bit because like I said, he's got these salt and pepper eyebrows. All right, just like that. I think he's going to get a kick out of this. So, all right. So tomorrow we're going to be illustrating some more and we are going to make some patterns. We're going to apply the patterns and textures to this card, and maybe we'll have time to do another printable or creative element. But if you have specific questions, bring those back tomorrow. I'll be here same time and we'll be doing our creative thing. Okay, so there he is. Let's compare to our reference image. Boom, and there he is. There's my dad. So it's looking pretty good so far. We're gonna keep going here. And now I just need to pick a shirt. Normally he wears a white shirt, okay? That's kind of his thing. So I'm gonna make a new layer. We'll call this shirt, and we'll group all of these. Don't worry, we'll organize these pretty quick here. And I'm gonna go back to my brushes. Once again, if you're wondering what I'm doing and how these brushes keep popping up, I'm just right-clicking. Or in your brush palette here, if you want, you can just pull them up. Another handy tip is Photoshop remembers the last, what's this, 7 brushes that I've selected here, probably more. But if I just tap on this one, it's going to bring me back to the marker I was using. So it's also a good way to just work quickly and effectively when you're illustrating or painting something. All right. So I can have all those brushes I like right there. Now, since the shirt's white, I'm just going to focus on adding some shadow. Okay, so shadow under the collar, right by this chin here, the tie, next to the tie, just like that. Maybe right here on the underarm, and it's a little bit weird and counterintuitive, but I'm adding what's called a core shadow just on the arm, on the outside. Again, similar to his face, but not quite to the very edge. And we can just blend that in like so, using our pressure sensitivity. All right, so immediately we have a white shape that now has some form and body to it. Pretty cool. And we just did that with this gray brush or marker. Well, not or marker, it is my marker brush. So if you're interested in knowing more about brushes and tweaking that, I can cover that tomorrow as well. You guys just let me know. All right, so pants, I'm trying to remember. He would either wear tan or dark gray pants. And this is kind of fun. It's taking me through a lot of memories. I say that as if he's gone. He's not gone, but I'm drawing a lot from memory here and trying to pull in cues or things that I recall, specifically from my childhood, actually. Okay, so let's just do some dark pants, and we'll just shade that in real quick, right in there. And this brush, because it has some opacity to it, we can, much like a real marker, if you've ever used a real marker, you can hit that line or that spot multiple times and it'll increase the intensity of color. So I can do that here in Photoshop, except with the real marker I can't change the size necessarily. So if I want to add some shadows and maybe hint at a zipper or something like that, I could do that. The simple line, same thing there. Boom. And let's get the belt brown in. All right. I'm going to switch back to hue, saturation, brightness. It's just a little easier for me to work with. Okay. Typically with printing, as long as you're not working with fully saturated colors, you're going to end up in an okay spot for printing. So that's one thing I try to do if I am doing a file for print. All right, so we got the belt in, shirt. It's got this funky tie. It looks like I made a mistake there, but again, since it's on a separate layer, I can just erase. Boom. Now, I have a couple options with these tie sections. I'm just gonna fill in with color and add some texture here and show you how I do that using another brush. Okay, so let's just pick some funky colors. Colors he would never wear, but I'll just pick some funky colors. So let's go with maybe purple for this section. Okay, just like that. And I want this to feel drawn, so I'm not going to put in solid colors. All right, so we'll just shade in. Here's some maybe funky green. So it's definitely a tie I would wear. I just don't think he would. Okay. His ties were always, typically striped, but I just want to do something funky here. Okay, let's do a yellow. Again, here's this little warning that Photoshop's giving me. So it's saying, let me hover over it so you'll see. It's saying click to select an in for you to something that I think you'll be able to print just fine. So it's handy as well if you are working in a CMYK file for print I'm actually going to switch to a solid brush here just to speed up a little bit. Fill these little dots in. Solid opacity brush. If I color outside the lines a bit, it's okay. Not too worried there. Let's do something of a reddish orange, perhaps. Again, there's that warning. I can click on it, and it's adjusting my color selection. Okay. So let's go ahead and fill this in, like so. And you know, I could color the stripes in if I wanted to, but we'll just fill in this whole section there. And I'm gonna use the eyedropper tool because we've got another polka dot section up top. Actually, we only have one purple, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Put purple up here. Funky purple tie. All right. Now the shirt, you may notice this is just a small thing, but you may notice the tie overlaps the shadow on the neck. So I'm gonna do two things here. I'm gonna move the layer order. So shirt, I'm gonna drag above this layer 1. We call this tie color. So I'm dragging that up, and now you'll see that the gray is above the tie color. If you zoom in really close, Photoshop will show you a grid of pixels as well. So there's a question here from Steve. Does Photoshop pick up that color thing from your printer driver? You know, I'm not sure. That's probably more of a technical question than I'm equipped to answer, but I do know that it at least estimates a safer color for you, which again, it's trying to help you like make sure your print looks okay. So shirt is above tie color now, and I'm gonna change the blend mode of shirt. So remember when we made a new layer, there was that option that said normal, multiply, that kind of thing. I'm gonna do the same thing in the layer window here. So on my palette next to opacity, it says normal. If I tap on that, I can now change the blend mode. In fact, dissolve is kind of cool if you are trying to illustrate and maybe you want a little bit of a textured feel. We can try one and see what that looks like. That's kind of cool. But it is making his pants dissolved as well. So I'm not going to use it in that way. I'll show you another way to do that, but let's get back to the color here. And under the blend mode, I'm going to select multiply. You can do multiply, you could do color burn is another one, but I'm going to do multiply. And in fact, if I now take the same marker and just paint a little bit lightly, okay, just a little lightly close to his chin here, it's going to give us a little bit of shadow. So a little bit of three-dimensionality. Okay, so that these things look like they overlap. And if you set it to multiply, it plays nicely with the colors. Okay, if we need to up the contrast, that kind of thing, we can as well in a couple spots. All right, so now we have a better shadow and overlap on my dad. This is actually pretty cool. I think he'll like this because it captures a lot of his essence. Okay. So now the thing I wanted to show you on the ties specifically, well, a couple things. Let's say I did all this work and I got the tie and I'm thinking, man, I don't really like that color combination. What can I do to tweak some stuff? Maybe I don't like the green and yellow sections. We can jump back to the polygonal lasso tool and I can make a selection here like so. Got to make sure we're on the right layer. Tie color. Cool, check. Now, what if I want to select the other green section? Okay, if I hold shift, you'll notice that there's a plus sign next to my cursor. So there it is to what was selected before. You can kind of think of a selection like taking another piece of paper and putting it over a piece of paper and cutting out a section so all you can see is what's not obscured. All right, or that's kind of what I'm working with. So with this selected, and I know it's selected because I now have the marching ants, as I like to call them, running around the perimeter of that area. I can go to image, adjustments, and I want to do hue saturation. Okay, so I'm going to click that. And I have this slider here now, or three sliders, hue, saturation, lightness, right? Similar to how I've been mixing color. So if I actually slide the hue slider, you'll notice that I can play with the color of this entire section. Okay, if I wanted to modify the color of the entire tie, I could as well. Let's say I like that, and I could do the same thing for this orange section. All right. This would be a lot easier if each color were on its own layer. Again, the benefits of working in a non-destructive way, but this gives me a chance to show you how to make specific selections in different spots on your image with the lasso tool. So same thing, hue saturation, and now I can play with this. Let's say I wanted this to be more of a teal. I can hit OK, and now I've changed the look of that tie entirely, right? Okay. And I like that better. All right, so with the last few minutes we have here, I'm going to add some text. Tomorrow we'll focus on patterns, well, text and texture. So another layer, and I have a brush that I created, a spray paint brush. So I'm going to go to Air, and let's use this little spatter brush. And if I want to add some texture to the tie, right, I can just add a bit of spray here. Let's zoom out so I can see where I'm going. Just a little bit of spray. Whenever I'm printing something, I like to have texture on it. Just a personal preference so it doesn't feel too flat. All right. And if you paint outside the lines, it's okay because we're on a different layer, we can erase. And I don't want these specks to be crisp necessarily and completely opaque. So what I'm going to do is now slide my opacity. You can actually tap the word opacity and slide as well. Slide that over, but I also want to pick multiply, so again it plays nicely with the colors. So we can slide these, you can use the numbers on your keyboard or just use the drop down. So 3 different ways to do it. Whatever works for you guys. And while I have this brush selected, right, I'm gonna just add some texture to the whole thing, just a little bit more through here. Okay, just on the outside, because fabric has texture, right? It's just a nice way to not have this feel necessarily too digital or flat, and we can clean up as well. So we'll get started on the text, and like I said, we'll finish up tomorrow, show you some pattern making, and we'll refine this and also answer your questions. So if you're watching this later and you have some questions, be sure to join us for tomorrow. We've got tons of good content coming up on Adobe Live as well. Okay, so now it's time to do our text. I like to write text and do it by hand. So let's just clean up a little bit here, and I'm going to take all these color layers that we had and just drag them into this group. You'll see that blue line appears. That just means it's going to put them at the bottom of the group. Okay, if I move up, you'll see I could put it above the dad lines layer or underneath. You can have groups and subgroups. So if I want to keep all the colors together, I can do layer, new, group from layers, and we'll call this colors, boom, and now it's collapse all of those and put them in the one layer, and I can turn these off and there's our original drawing, or I can turn them on and there's our color. Cool. So now let's do some more sketch stuff. I'm gonna just take some of these things because I don't need the reference image anymore, and I'm gonna group these, and Control G is the shortcut for group, by the way. I'm just going to take these and we'll call this reference and roughs. Okay. And now I'm going to make a new layer. We can call this layer text outline. And oops, I think I called it test. If you want to rename a layer, just double click on the layer name, not the layer itself, because that's going to give you different options. The layer name, and that's going to allow you to change and just type in whatever you want. Okay, so text outline, and let's use our red pencil technique, and we'll rough it out, and tomorrow we'll finish it up and make some changes as well. Okay, so back to this heavy, it's called my heavy Spencil. That's what it's called. I'm Spencer, so it should be a Spencil. Okay, so that's my heavy Spencil, and now I'm just going to just rough out here where I want this text. Okay, and the shape. So I mean, the shape could be like this. All right, maybe a shape like this, and then we'll decide what we're gonna write. But this is kind of how I make my guides if I'm doing some sort of text. The other thing you can do if you're working quickly is switch between red and blue. It's just a fast way to layer and figure things out. Okay. Now with text, what I like to do is, kind of have this midline here, and that's going to allow me to place things like, let's go back to colors, my apologies. It doesn't matter if these are in gamut or not. I just want a nice bright blue, by the way. So ignore the warning right there. But basically it's saying, I don't think we can print this blue if you were going to print it reliably anyways. So here, and I'm trying to decide if I want this to say I love you or best dad ever. We'll just start with best dad. Okay. So I'm trying to visually estimate the space that I'm going to need. And let's say best ends about there and DAD, that feels about right. So now I'm just going to make some divisions. BEST, something like that. And then DAD. All right. And if we need to tweak it, we can. So we'll just come in, and now I'll just start to make up my own kind of text here as I go. You can always use, a real font as inspiration. I always find that that's helpful as well. But we'll just blue line this a little bit more. And I do want to show you guys what's coming up next today. So we'll definitely finish this up tomorrow. So hopefully I'll see you either in the Discord or back here on Adobe Live for getting started. All right. So real quick, let's just blow through this, and we may make some changes tomorrow. We'll see where we end up. All right. So you can see how this middle line here is kind of helping me. I'll make some tweaks as well, but the idea being that's where I'm going to put my cross elements. Best. Oh, that's a D. I was trying to illustrate a T there. Okay. And if it's too cramped or whatever, we can always make changes, but I'll show you how to do some of that tomorrow as well. All right. So that's where we're at now. Again, if you want to move things, you can pick your layers, select the move tool, put things where you want them to be. If you want to rotate something, we can always rotate as well. Lots of stuff you can do non-destructively if you think about how to put together your drawing and create a strategy. Again, rough it out, or when in doubt, rough it out. Light till you get it right. Take the pressure off. Work in layers. Work as non-destructively as you can, and that's just going to help you have that flexibility in Photoshop. Up next, we have the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge with Paul Tranny. We've got photo compositing after that. The Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge with Julie Malaska. Well, I'm probably butchering her last name. My bad. With Julie. I'll just say Julie. Draw Along with Cal Webster is coming up too at 2:30. Those are always fun. Design Off with Voodoo Val at 3. We've got the XD Creative Challenge with Peter Del Tondo. And at 12, we have Branding and Identity Design with Lena Cordero and Julia Masalska. Masalska, there you go. Masalska. My bad. Okay, guys. So, once again, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave those. I'll be joining Discord to answer questions. And if you're interested, point you to some drawing resources. If this is a skill you want to develop, I have tons of content for you guys as well. So tomorrow, once again, we're just going to be finishing up our piece here. We're going to be working on text, and we are going to work on some background pattern elements and maybe make some other changes. All right. So let me know if there's something you want to see or questions that you have. I'll be happy to answer those tomorrow. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining, and stick around afterward for Paul Tranny. Take care, guys.